joins me from my affiliate WJR and the Great Voice of the Great Lakes. Thaddeus, you've been through many campaign events, and you've watched campaigns, you've studied them, you've run your own. And the events in Mississippi over these last days, I come to you intuitively. What we know so far is a 28-year-old man named Clayton Kelly broke in to take photographs of Senator Thad Cochran's disabled wife. She's bedridden. She's been in a home for several years. She's said to be suffering from dementia. Right away, Thaddeus, my sense of the family in a campaign is that families participate, they don't participate. But is there an understanding between campaigns that you don't crowd an opponent's family? You don't break in on them. Is that correct, or does anything go these days?
Well, it's increasingly sad, John, but an instance such as the one we've just referenced shows that the unwritten rules and some of the absolutely necessary forbearance by candidates to realize that winning isn't everything seem to be going out the window. I mean, this is just cruel, it's unusual, and I can see no point to it.
The judge in Mississippi has put a $100,000 bond on this 28-year-old man, Clayton Kelly. He keeps a blog called Constitutional Clayton. This story came up suddenly. Mississippi is a hot primary. June 3rd is the date. Thad Cochran, the long-serving senator from Mississippi, and his challenger, McDaniel, a young, vigorous man who's campaigning hard throughout the state, has a lot of support. This isn't just Tea Party versus establishment. This is Mississippi politics, and we're very pleased to welcome David Drucker, who spent several days last week traveling to Mississippi. David works for the Washington Examiner, was on the ground, observed these events. I saw it happening on the blogs, and David filed a story on Saturday about it. David, a very good evening to you. Is there an explanation from the Cochran campaign or the McDaniel campaign as to why this blogger did it and who he thought he was helping or hurting?
No, we don't have any definitive explanation yet. And in fact, the jousting over the weekend, John, and into today was about the timeline of who knew what and when. The Cochran campaign has referred all comment to their attorney. The McDaniel campaign has had to issue a revised timeline of when Chris McDaniel's campaign manager found out about this, when she reached out to the Cochran campaign to express her, sympathy and outrage, and when exactly Chris McDaniel was briefed. And I thought, to me, that was really key, because as I was covering a spring festival, kind of like a town fair in DeSoto County up there in northwest Mississippi, Chris McDaniel was asked by a colleague of mine from another newspaper, Alex Jaffe of the Hill, hey, what do you think about this? It broke this morning, and he told her, hey, this is the first time hearing about it. I'm not quite sure what's going on yet. And in the same breath, his campaign manager, Melanie Sojourner, told Jaffe, we're going to issue a statement shortly. And she was very short about that. Now, look, there's nothing unusual about a campaign manager not wanting to comment and asking reporters to wait for a statement. It usually means that they're trying to gather the facts, figure out how they're going to respond, and they don't, want to crisscross themselves. But here we have a situation where in one breath the candidate's saying he doesn't know everything that's happened, and the campaign manager in the next breath is saying a statement's coming out shortly. Now, usually when a statement's coming out shortly, it means the candidate's been briefed, so the candidate knows what the candidate wants to say, and now it's a statement that's going to be crafted and revised, edited, and read over and approved by the candidate. So there were signs that they didn't really have all their ducks in a row, and I've seen campaigns that it's like the fog of war. It's really actually nothing nefarious or corrupt, if you will. It's just people not getting straight with each other. But it added to the sense on Saturday and Sunday in Mississippi that the McDaniel campaign knew more about this Clayton Thomas Kelly, or Thomas Clayton Kelly, whatever his name is, than it was letting on, and that was it's a potential problem of perception for them.
Thaddeus?
Well, David, when you were down there, I think you're absolutely right, the fog of war. But there's an intuitive sense that you have from covering these. Do you think it is more of just the inability of a let's say, less than seasoned campaign at this point to get their ducks in a row, or are there some ducks that may wind up cooked like geese?
This is one of those times, Thaddeus, when I'm having a hard time, sort of settling on a gut opinion here. I took a look at Kelly's blog, and it's a very political blog. There's a picture of him with Chris McDaniel, and the fact that they couldn't get their timeline straight, made me wonder if they were more connected to this character than they were saying, and they were really concerned about that. On the other hand, I see this all the time, where the inability of politicians and campaigns to function with precision accuracy looks like something is corrupt, looks like people are lying, when in fact it's just people being stupid and people being inexperienced. And this is an inexperienced team with an inexperienced candidate, and this is the kind of thing that happens. And so I think that if it were me and I was going to try and do something really underhanded to get a leg up on my opponent, I can think a lot of things that are unseemly and straddle the fence and, potentially unethical that would be a lot more effective than this.
The candidate, Senator Cochran, canceled his events over the weekend. I note this in the report, David, the Clarion Ledger, which is the paper of record on this in Mississippi. This is from the CBS News summary. Reports that Sojourner, the campaign manager, State Senator Melanie Sojourner is McDaniel's campaign manager. Her initial response in a voicemail left with the Cochran campaign is, "We don't know this guy. We have no idea who he is." However, later, she characterizes this. "There was some stuff several months ago where this guy was doing some insane stuff online. We found out about it, and Chris and I immediately sicked a bunch of volunteers trying to find out who was the source of just a lot of ugly rumors and nasty stuff, and we want it squashed." That Chris, that would be the candidate, right, David? Chris and I?
Yes.
So what we're looking at is Sojourner not giving all the facts when she was first asked. Perhaps she wanted to review it with her boss, or perhaps there's more to this relationship between the blogger, now suspect, Kelly, and McDaniel himself.
It's very possible. Look, and especially spending a couple of days down there and attending, one campaign event for McDaniel, and then watching him at this other event, this town festival. It's the kind of campaign that hasn't raised that much money. It's done okay, but they're depending on a lot of volunteers and a lot of people that maybe aren't always involved in campaigns. And it's possible that at one point or another, Kelly said, "Hey, I want to help. I want to be involved," and they're like, "Sure, that's great." And, in their rush to not have a connection with him, or not want people to think there was any connection, they may have overplayed it.
You're a generous man, David, but I don't like this sentence. "We found out about it, and Chris and I immediately sicked a bunch of volunteers trying to find out who was the source of just a lot of ugly rumors and nasty stuff." Can we leave it like this, David? There are a lot of ugly rumors in Mississippi right now, right?
There are, and it could very much impact the race.
Tell us about the polls, David. Are they close?
We don't know. I believe that we don't know publicly. I think privately the polls have this thing within 10 points or less. People in Mississippi who are worried for Cochran feel a little bit better today because of this, but they don't think this thing's over, and it could go down to the wire.
Thaddeus, 30 seconds. What's your intuition about this? Bursting into a woman's bedridden facility.
It's horrible, and it sounds as if the campaign had some relationship through the new Netroots activity to try to get through the primary. They did not condone this, but they're trying to figure out how to distance themselves from someone they did have some contact with.
Thaddeus McCotter, WJR, the great voice of the Great Lakes. The cover-up is always worse than the crime. David Drucker, Washington and Examiner. June 3rd is the primary in Mississippi. I'm John Batchelor.